was insane. Behind my house, we have a big church parking lot, and it just glassed over with ice, and then the snow got on top of it. And you should have seen the trucks having fun spinning their way through that. It was like the I've seen in a long, long time. So I hope you all got there safely and everybody's fine. Listen, we're recording this for next time. So for the kids at home, and yeah, my biggest class is an at-home class right now in World Civ. So it's pretty important, as you're going to see. Now we're going to do, and we're going to try to get to the important stuff here. So let's share the screen. And this is what I like to call the research edition, because now we're really heavy into the research part. So let me just get the lecture to the start. We're looking now at days 28 to 34 of the Biden administration. So we're approaching, by the end of the week, a third of the way through the 100 days. That part, which we call often the honeymoon period, the period where we always give a chance to the new president, see what they can do. And look, they're not going to hit home runs every single day, but it's important that we see runs being scored. And especially, we're going to be following in the weeks ahead the law that Biden's trying to get through, the Recovery Act, from the COVID crisis, the economic recovery, and see, if that gets through. That's going to be really important for the economic recovery, for your economic part of your essay. But right now, I'm just, spending more of my time helping you with the COVID one. If I can help you with one, that's the one I'm going to help you with, and then you'll have to figure the others out. But you'll kind of understand how to do it, because I'm, showing you how to collect data, essentially right now, that you can use. So for example, 10 days into the administration, we know Utah. Now remember Biden's promise. He was going to treat all Americans the same, whether they voted for him or not. And Utah didn't vote for him. So how is he going to treat us? Well, it looks like we're being treated just the same as anybody else. And so in the other state. So here we have a 0.5% vaccination rate coming in the first 10 days. Now, that was in the inherited part. This is what was in motion before he got control of things and started to streamline the distribution and make things work a little better. By February 1st, we were almost at 2%. By the 7th, we were at 3.14%. And so we're seeing improvement. Today, we're at 5%. So we're about halfway there to the promise, because if we can get to 10% in 100 days, then that means we have our share of the population of the 100 million have been vaccinated. Now, the problem right now is I think Biden has fixed the distribution problem. There's plenty of places and ways to distribute the product now, right? The problem is now in the supply. The companies can't make it fast enough. And remember, all these companies like Pfizer and Moderna and their partners, and you look at Johnson & Johnson, these are worldwide global conglomerates that are selling to the world. So the demand is outrageously high. So countries have to buy it from those companies. And these companies are multinational, international companies. These aren't American companies, right? These are international companies. Well, Biden just did this, and this is important, I think, if you're going to write this portion of your research, 200 additional million doses, 200 million more than what we had before. He gets into office, the supply's not there. He scrambles to get as many as he can. And now we have 600 million doses that have been ordered or purchased already, 600 million. Now that means we can vaccinate nearly all of Americans. I know they'll make another purchase as soon as they can. And we're gonna have to get boosters. This isn't the end of it, because we have 7, remind you, listen to this, 7 new strains just in the United States alone. We've identified 7 mutations within our own country. That's over and above the one coming from South America, the one coming from South Africa, the one coming from England. So this is a long battle ahead, and it's not going to be cheap, and it's not going to be fun, and it's going to mean that we have to continue the fight, maybe well into next year. Who knows? But by mid-June, we should have everybody that wants a vaccination can get a vaccination. All right, so that's looking like it's the distribution system seems to be solved. But what isn't solved is the supply. So how fast, what was it, Pfizer, one of them, Moderna said they could cut their production time in half because they now figured out, every step and how they're doing it. So let's just wish them all luck. Now, one of the other parts of this is how to open schools. Biden wanted to get mostly schools open as much as possible in the 100 days. Boy, that's going to be a tough one. Can he do it? Well, you can open them, but not safely, right? So the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, came out with a 4-colored little chart that basically is transmission rate. And the rules change based upon the transmission rate. If it's low transmission, open up, have school just like normal. Put in a few more restrictions if it's yellow, more if it's orange, but if it's red, you go to the full on, we can't hold normal school kind of situation that we're in now. Right. Here's the problem. Right now, 92% of America's, now you could write this number down if you wanted. 92% of America's children are in high transmission areas. So what does that mean? You're in one, by the way. In fact, I didn't show this in the last class. I think I will. Let's go ahead and take a look at this right here. Look at this number since Inauguration Day. Since Biden took office, the 100 days of mask wearing, people taking this seriously, people now who maybe have had it and have some immunity, combined with people vaccinated, combined with much better mask wearing, still only 62%. If we had 95% mask wearing for 2 months, we wouldn't be into this mess. We'd all be in the blue area. But we still have people that refuse to wear masks, especially in rural areas. But let's take a look at why it's so important for us here in Utah. In Utah, here's the chart I go to on the Johns Hopkins University, which is like the top site for this worldwide. I mean, this is recognized. They were tracking the great pandemic back in the 1918. But here's our hospitalization. This is so much better than it was. We were way up here. The number of beds occupied by COVID as opposed to other emergencies, this is so much better today. It's still not great. So keep those masks on. Let's keep a lot of old people, especially people just out of the hospital. But as you look down here, look at the county demographics. Now, luckily, I'm going to be able to get to my home in St. George next week, and they don't have much going on down there. But in Utah County, oh boy, we've got 36 new cases per 100,000 people. So that's a rate of, that's high. And Wasatch County is bad too. Summit County, which is Park City area, really bad. Salt Lake, not great. Not great. Davis, not great in Tooele, and that's more of a rural area, but they got, yuck. This is down in the Navajo Reservation area. And as you're going to see, Native Americans are disproportionately hit by this. They're keeping track by ethnicity, how you respond to this. The Native Americans, 1% of the population, 1% of the cases have 4% of those that have passed away. There's just maybe an immunity issue there. I don't know what it is. No one, we'll have to find out. That's why we do these studies, is to find out, are the differences in populations in this case. 14% of the population is Latino here in Utah, and it's 23% of the cases. And all the people I know that have passed are from friends of mine who are Latino, who lost great aunt and 2 uncles, older uncles, all in their 60s, to this, two in Arizona and 1 in Mexico itself. 16% of those that have passed, and it's 14% of the population. So a little bit higher than the average population. And you can look at the daily cases. This is a great site. Does Utah meet the recommended testing criteria? No, but I got some good news on that front too. Let's go ahead and talk about this. Your school, right, is now testing regularly, which is really important because we're in a red zone. So can we just return to normal school? No, we can't. We're doing the right thing here. What we're doing right now is the right thing. And it's most restrictions. Elementary schools can remain open. Now, here's the interesting part. Those younger kids, they don't transmit. They have it. And it doesn't seem to affect them as much as older students or college students, or like you are. They don't tend to transmit. There doesn't seem to be, high transmission rates in elementary schools because they're doing the precautions, they're wearing the masks and so on. But older you are, the more likely you will transmit. So it is an age dependent thing, it looks like. Middle or high schools are recommended to go hybrid or virtual only, which is exactly what we're doing. It's the only option right now. means wearing masks, social distancing, cleaning everything, and you guys do a great job with that. And then here's the part that's new, that's important for Utah: contact tracing. Look, we need to test every student every week, ideally, and then find those 1 or 2 students that may have come in contact with it and have it, and quarantine just those students and the people they've come in contact with. That's what contact tracing is. This is how you get to where Australia is right now, where life has returned to normal. They test like crazy. They find these hotspots, and then they just isolate those hotspots from the rest of the population for a week or so, and then and vaccinate those people, and off they go. So we can get to this, but it's going to take us months more because we just let this get out of control and across the country. And so we're doing the right thing. We're still in the red zone. People like me at my age, plus the people I live with and I'm around who have very high mortality rates with this thing. A 99-year-old mom, for example, and people with some serious conditions. There's no way I can take a risk and be there with you. There's no way. Not yet anyway, but I get my second shot next week. Once my wife gets vaccinated, then we'll be joining you in person. But we just have to do this kind of thing. And you'll remember this the rest of your lives. This will be the best history lesson you've ever had. You know, you're sitting there thinking, oh, my education's no, it's not being disrupted. You're learning on the job. You're learning more than any other generation ever has because you're living through it. Now, why do bars and restaurants create so much problem? Why do we tend to close them down first? I mean, in fact, the CDC said, make a choice. If you're in a red zone, close down your schools or close down your bars and restaurants and gyms. Here's the reason. Bars are notoriously, especially as it gets later at night, people congregate, and you can't drink and wear a mask. You can't eat and wear a mask. And if you're in a crowded condition, and by the way, time exposure is important. If you just brush past somebody with it, no problem. It's when you talk with them for a bit and there's a certain period of time, the new strains are more contagious, you know that. So a little less time. But if you're 6 feet away and have a mask on and you're talking to somebody for a few minutes, that's not going to be a problem. But it's when you go maskless and you're sitting there for an hour having dinner or drinking with friends, that's bad. Gyms have figured it out. If they put in new ventilation systems, and that's one thing that Biden's pushing for in the law, the $1.9 trillion is to refit all the schools with adequate ventilation. I don't know if you've ever been to a casino in Vegas. But the casinos in Vegas, you know, they still allow people to smoke in there, right? And get secondhand smoke, and come on, give me a break. It's not good for your health, right? So they have these massive ventilation systems, and basically you walk through the Mirage, you walk through Caesar's Palace, whatever, you don't smell smoke, you get a little bit whiff here and there, but they vent it so well. We need to do that with our schools. Now, the room you're in right now is, I think, and I'm not an expert, so, you know, it's just an opinion that probably isn't worth much, but that machine that keeps us hot and cold behind you in the corner brings all the air from the outside. Plus, on warmer days, we can open the windows. So I think because it's a trailer, it has a little bit more ventilation perhaps than a traditional building where everything's more contained and enclosed and controlled. So yeah, maybe that room you're in is a little safer than some other schools have, maybe down, say, Mountain View or whatever. I don't know. We'll have to have, people, engineers tell us. But I'm thinking it's pretty safe because that air, all the air, the heat, the hot air, the cold air that comes in is sucked right in from the outside, right into the room. So that's good. Now, what about dining? So many jobs have been lost in these industries. It's just a horrible thing. Millions of people, restaurants just don't need a full staff anymore if they can open at all. And lots of restaurants have closed. So in other countries, they're doing a lot of things. Like here's Jakarta. They're just putting up these screens between tables, right? There's things you can do. In fact, there are 7 ways social distancing will change dining in the country of Indonesia. Countries are responding to this. These are some great ones. Here's London, right? Here's the Thames River. And they built these little individual eating pods for just you and your family to go away from everybody else. That's clever because it's cold there, right? You can't eat outside. So they have their own little private little dining space. Now it is expensive and a lot of restaurants can't afford it. And a lot of restaurants are going out of business and it's sad. But if you do have some money there, if there's a will, there's a way. Look at this in Jakarta. That's not expensive to do. This right here, a little more expensive and a little more high end. So if you have a high class, look at this. I love these bubbles. I just love that image of having this around you while you're eating, you know. Oh, wow. It takes me back to my days when I was a kid. We had a thing called Get Smart and the Cone of Silence, and you'll have to see the movie, but nevertheless, yeah. All right. So our president is acting on all of this. He's, by the way, here's a picture of Biden with the Pope. I just saw that just now, just right down here. It'll pop back up here in a second and you'll see it there. Anyway, here's the thing. I'm teaching you an important lesson right now about presidential orders. Presidential orders mean there is a law that has been passed, and what is the best way to make that law happen? To faithfully execute the law as it says in the oath of office. Well, presidential orders are temporary to the president at the time. And the former president really hated this ACA, the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act is Obamacare. Tried everything he could to get rid of it. You can't get rid of it because it's a law. Only Congress can get rid of a law by replacing it with another law. And there never was a replacement, so the law stands. Now, because of different actions, enrollment dropped from now, Obamacare only covers a small segment of the American population. Those that make enough money to be able to pay part of their own premium and but can't get health care through maybe they're self-employed and not through their employer and so on. So right now it's about 9-10 million people. If you're really poor, you have a chance to take what we call Medicaid. So if you're really poor, boy, don't hesitate, sign up for Medicaid, and you'll get healthcare paid for by us as taxpayers. Everybody gets it in Medicaid. If you can't afford it, you'll get some help. So Medicaid and Obamacare, the ACA, are a little different, but they're tied together right in the law. Now, despite dropping the numbers from 14 million to 9, it never went away, the Obamacare part, because it's popular. People need it. There's a certain segment of people need it. So what Biden did was reverse the orders of the previous president, like that. And then he opened up the ACA enrollment period, because they usually do it in January, right now when people need it most, and they're allowing people to sign up, and they're signing up right and left because they've either lost their jobs, so they're going to take Medicaid, or they can still afford to pay some premiums, so they sign up for that instead. So let's go ahead and listen to the president doing the presidential order thing to make the law work more efficiently. And here's what Biden said 2 days ago.
It's been a busy week, and I've signed executive orders tackling COVID-19, economic and climate crises, as well as advancing racial equity. But today I'm about to sign 2 executive orders that are basically, the best way to describe them, to undo the damage Trump has done. There's nothing new that we're doing here other than restoring the Affordable Care Act and restoring the Medicaid to the way it was before Trump became president, which by fiat he changed, made more inaccessible, more expensive, and more difficult for people to qualify for either of those 2 items, the Affordable Care Act or Medicaid. And the second order I'm going to be signing also changes what the president's done, what former president has done, and it a memorandum reversed my predecessor's attack on women's health access, and as we continue to battle COVID-19, even more critical, Americans have meaningful access to health care. And so that's what I'm about to do. And again, I'm not initiating any new law.
Do you hear that? I'm not initiating any new law. I'm not writing a new law. I'm just taking the law that was watered down by the executive orders of a former president, and I'm reinstating it and making it accessible and less costly. So this is kind of one of the powers of the president, to faithfully execute the law that was passed by Congress, and he's now making this more affordable and more accessible to many millions and more people. Here we go.
That's what I'm about to do. And again, I'm not initiating any new law, any new aspect of the law. This is going back to what the situation was prior to the president's executive order. And the first one I'm going to be signing here is the Strengthen Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. And of all times that we need to reinstate access to, affordability of, and extent of access to Medicaid is now in the middle of this COVID crisis.
And that is how it is done. And so that goes through the federal government. They do what the president has ordered there to faithfully execute the law and to make it more effective. All right, well, now let's, hopefully that helped you. Don't forget 600 million doses now have been purchased by the United States. Also too, we're really pushing the manufacturers to produce more and more. Remember, we're in a worldwide competition for this vaccine. So this won't end until we get 8 billion people vaccinated, basically. So, or have access to vaccinations if they want them. So it's a big fight, but that's your part of your research paper. So I've kind of given you some data points now that you can put in that section of your paper. And that's the one I'm committed to kind of helping you with, make sure that you see how this is done. It's just data. You're not expressing an opinion. We'll have a separate essay that you'll write about this issue, but that will come later after you've done the research. And a good example of how to do that is the assignment I just gave you. The assignment I just gave you is about this trial, right? But it's also going to show you how the research and the opinion pieces are separated. When you're in college, you have to do research. And research has got to be based on empirical evidence. It can't be based upon opinion. The problem, I think, coming through elementary grades and whatever, they just want kids to write anything and to work with their sentence structure and whatever and improve their vocabulary. So whatever they write's fine. But in college, it's different. You've got to write a specific kind of thing for each subject. And so you've got to follow the rules. So this idea of just expressing your opinion to fill up the first 2-3 paragraphs so you don't have to write quite so much is not going to fly. In the research portion, you have got to put one fact every single sentence if you're going to get top marks. You can't just sit there and basically filibuster or talk your way through, using lots of long sentences when short sentences will do. The concentration of the amount of research that you do, the things you uncover, the quantitative unfolding of research, of things you've actually learned, right, is what matters here. So let's go take this as an example. Now, remember, this is Tip O'Neill, right? And he was good friends with Ronald Reagan. One was a Democrat, one was a Republican. They got along famously. They passed laws together. We can have a different politics. We don't have to be so divided. But yet, we live in a time of polarization. Nevertheless, all politics is still local. And we're going to key on that. And never forget this. A person who agrees with you 80% of the time is a friend and an ally, not a 20% traitor. I have Democratic friends, I have Republican friends, and I have a lot of independent friends. And we agree on 90% of everything. We want good schools, we want good communities. We want everybody to thrive in this country. We just maybe have a little bit of disagreement here and there on how to get there. So I don't think anybody I know, Democrats or Republicans, independents, are traitors. They're not. They're good people with just differences of opinion. That used to be okay. But now for some, that's not okay anymore. That's why I love being in Utah right now, because we haven't fallen under this yet, where it's called a litmus test, where if you don't answer the questions a certain way, then you're quarantined. We have 2 senators, right? Both of them very, very famous, by the way. These are not lightweights in the Senate. Lee, right? Former constitutional law guy, and Romney, of course, former candidate for president, governor of a state. And we're lucky to have them. But let me explain the situation. We had a trial. Now, the trial ended quickly. Why? Because each side was given 16 hours to make their case. Now, last week, you heard the Democratic side. Today, all we're going to talk about is Republicans, period. So we're going to get the Republican side now, right? We'd have done it last week, but they hadn't presented it. They didn't start presenting their side till Friday. But here's how it went. 10 hours or so is what the House managers used. They didn't use their full time. So that meant the defense could start early, which they did. Now they knew how it was going to turn out. Everybody knew how it was going to turn out. So they just spent 4 hours and they were done and dusted and sat down. Then the senators had a chance to ask questions, and they posed questions to the chair, who was the president pro tem of the Senate. They call him the president at that time, and that Patrick Leahy. And I know Romney submitted a question. I heard one of his. It was a very good question. Lee, I'm sure, submitted a question. But they asked those questions, and then they did allow for witnesses. Only one witness. Their testimony was put into the congressional record, and then they voted. Now, here's again why this assignment works so well. Lee voted. I got that just wrong. I just got it backwards. Let me change that. Let's go. I got this just backwards. Let's exit that out. Let's try this again. That is funny. Okay, so let's go ahead. So Lee voted to acquit. I hope nobody in last hour, got mixed up on that. They shouldn't. If they do their research, that won't be a problem. But Lee voted to acquit, and Romney voted to convict. Now, this was the most bipartisan impeachment vote in the Senate ever. Because up until the last impeachment, only Mitt Romney had ever voted against a person of its own party. This was the biggest vote to take action against a former president ever in American history, but it still fell 10 votes short. Here's the point. You'll never have a president removed by the Senate, because this is a political process, not a legal one. It's a political process. And so politics plays a role. Now, don't forget that all politics is local, right? So if you're a senator from Alabama, and the majority of those folks, they're like plus 39 or something for the Republican Party. If you voted against this, you're going to get primaried in your own party. Utah's a little different than that. I like to call Utah politics pragmatic politics. We're not Alabama. We're not North Carolina. We're definitely not Mississippi. We're not even Georgia, and we're not even Florida. We're different. And it's a good thing. Because in other states, let's take this as an example. Let's go through the 7 senators that were Republican now, 7 that voted against the president to convict. Republicans, right? Remember, it's all about Republicans today. Most of them have been censured by their own political party back home. We talked about Liz Cheney before. Here's Richard Burr of North Carolina, the guy from Louisiana that voted to convict. He was censured by his own political party. But here's what Richard Burr, who's been there forever, long-standing senator from North Carolina, but here's what his political party said to him back home. The North Carolina GOP agrees with the strong majority of Republicans in both the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate that the Democrat-led attempt to impeach the former president lies outside the Constitution. Burr responded. He said, "It's a sad day for North Carolina Republicans. My party's leadership has chosen loyalty to one man over the core principles of the Republican Party and the founders of our great nation." So they basically slapped him on the wrist, said, "You did wrong." But he snapped back and said, "No, I didn't." Ben Sasse was also censured in Nebraska, but snapped back with his own comments. And in Utah, it's been a different story. In Utah, when that happened, here's what the Utah GOP voted to do. And this is really good. I'm going to leave this in, for years to come, hopefully be here for years teaching this class, hopefully in person. Here's the thing. The GOP of Utah was national news, by the way. This went national all over. It was on CNN, it was on Fox, it was on all these different stations. The GOP, Utah GOP, rejects, quote, unanimity of thought. The differences between our own Utah Republicans showcase a diversity of thought, the differences between Lee and Romney's vote. In contrast to the danger of a party fixated on unanimity of thought. According to the statement, they said this: there is power in our differences as a political party, and we look forward to each senator explaining their votes to the people of Utah. And they didn't censure Romney. Some people tried, but Utah's more pragmatic than that. It's kind of a great place to be from. And you got two senators, both of them have strong opinions, and you get a chance to explore those. And that really becomes your paper. One voted to convict, one voted to acquit. Now, here's what you got to do. Let's go look at the assignment. All right. So we're going to go ahead and see where I think it's here. Yeah, here it is. So name, class as usual. Quick summary: Senate voted 57 to convict, 43 to acquit. On Sunday, it was 10 short of those that were needed. 7 Republicans, including Mitt Romney, voted to convict, guilty, make it the most bipartisan Senate impeachment in history. Most bipartisan ever. Mike Lee of Utah voted to acquit, not guilty. The vote needed was 67 to 33 to convict. Okay, now here's the thing. Notice the R's here. That means research, and research only. If you start babbling opinion in this section, you will be marked down. And this is not going to work out well right now, because, and you're going to have to go back and redo it, because here's the thing. This is the first score to go in the research section where your research paper's going. In other words, it's a big category. It's 30% of your grade. So if you don't do real good research here and you get between, you paste up to about 500 words. So you just find the best quotes, find the best summary. And by the way, those that I've read have done a brilliant job here. It's just all the evidence of what they said. No opinion at all. Just what did they say? And find those quotes, find those statements, summarize them if it's really long, and stick them in these boxes. It's going to be the first grade in that category. So when I put the M's in on Wednesday, you're going to watch your grade drop like a rock. But you finish this and it'll go right back up just that quick. So don't panic if it suddenly drops 30%, because that's what's going to happen. Your grade, whatever it is today, will drop 30% if you don't get this done by Wednesday when I put the M's in. But you can easily fix it. It'll go right back up 30%. So nobody panic. Then you write your opinion in the EQ essay. This is where you decide what you think and put down your thoughts, knowing full well that you will be a voter voting next time. And this is why we call it a political process. This is not a legal process. It's a political one. Why go through the exercise then if the whole thing was predetermined? If we already knew that the former president was to be acquitted? Well, because there's two reasons. One is we want to know how our representatives represented us. That's the politics of it. It's how we make decisions in a democracy. Do we want this person to continue to represent us or not? Based on their record, based on what they've done. And so it's to put all the senators and all the members of the House on the record for their voters back home. So the voters can decide whether they want this, give this person consent or the mandate to lead us in the future. That's what's important about it. And then the other side of it is the verdict of history, because that historical record, that 13 minutes, is going to be played forever. This will be dissected every which way by political science and history classes in the future like you cannot believe. So this is one of those moments where you just can't escape it. And whatever opinion you have is totally fine with me. I believe in the First Amendment. Look at me, square in the eyes. Everybody look up here. I believe in the First Amendment. I believe in freedom of speech. I believe everybody should have their own opinion, that we shouldn't have a unanimity of thought, that we shouldn't just be a bunch of ditto heads just Xeroxing the answers that we think, are going to make people happy. Think. That's why it's so good. You do the research, think for yourself. Now, here's another thing you have to understand about the First Amendment. If you believe in freedom of speech, freedom of the press, right to assemble, prepare to be offended, because somebody's going to say something that you're not going to be comfortable with. But it's their right to say it. Just like you may say something someday that they might find offensive. So we have to agree amongst ourselves that we're going to just say, okay, that's fine. We can have a disagreement. We can agree to disagree and not lose any friendships over it or any relationships over it. Again, we're usually only arguing about 5% of this stuff. 95% of the stuff we all agree on. So this is one of those moments in history like no other. And this, I really believe, is the most important assignment I've given for two reasons. One, I think the issue is important, but also two, notice the difference between research and opinion writing, because that's what you're going to have to do in your paper. In your research paper, it's just this and none of that. After the 60 days, I will give you an opinion essay on all 4 elements that you're writing about in your paper, and you can write your opinions there, but we're going to separate the research from the opinion writing because they're 2 very different styles of writing, and I really need you to understand the difference as you go through your university career. Okay, so that being said, let's go back to the website and I can show you kind of what I've done for you. Again, this is the research edition of the lecture, so we're getting you ready, I hope. But basically, here's the thing. If you come down to the paper guidance, I put this in 3 separate places because I've taken the survey down until day 60. I won't accept any submissions till day 60. When you do submit it, you can't use a link to a Google Doc because they change. I've got to capture this research for the university. So when they ask, how are their research skills? And I'll just simply say, hey, you want to read them? And there won't be any opinions in there. It'll be all pure research, and they're going to be smiling from ear to ear because that's what they want their students to do is research. So let's go ahead and click on any one of these links. But here, get the questions. Here, I posted the deadlines. You can't turn it in until day 60. So that's actually a Saturday. I'll open it up on the Friday so you can start to cut and paste. And what I would do is I would go down here. April 1st is the early turn in. If you want my help, think of this like a vaccination. If you want a vaccination for your paper, so when you submit something that's incomplete on May 1st, you have a month to get it to me, to let me help you fix it. I want you all to get an A. Every single one in this room. I want you all to get an A. You kind of have to earn it. So let me help you earn it. Right? Let me point out the weaknesses and say, hey, fix this, fix that, and you'll be fine. All right, now I will not grade links to Google Docs. I'll just say resubmit. Now, here's the 4 questions, and what I would do is simply this. I put them right down here for you. I would just copy and paste those questions into a Google Doc and start accumulating my research. Now, you should have done it already on this first one, right? 100-day pandemic under control, right? That one, I've been giving you data. I've given you enough data to actually pull that one together. The rest of them, you're going to have to dig for yourself, just like you're going to have to dig with Romney and Lee. I'm not going to do that for you. I won't tell you what Romney said. I'm not going to tell you what Lee said. You're going to find that for yourself. That's the research part. Okay, so now you just copy and paste that. Then when you open up the guide, you can just copy and paste your paragraph. Now here's something too that you need to know. If you are short, even one word, I will mark it down. So just use this to Google Tools right here, word count, 122. That's short, right? We need more words than that. Okay, so here's the thing. This is how I grade your guides. If I say 150 words and it looks short to me, I'll copy and paste it into a Google Doc, count the words, and I'll deduct the percent of writing you didn't do. It's easy. It takes me seconds. And most people, the writing's good, at least good enough, but they leave it short. I can't ask everybody to do 300 words and somebody does 150 and get full credit for that. That's not going to happen. So they can resubmit, and you'll be able to resubmit, but not this paper. If it's May 1st, there's no resubmission on this. There's resubmission if you get it in by April 1st. You can resubmit. You can't resubmit after May 1st. So I'm urging you, let me help you with this paper. I'm just saying. All right, well, let's get back now to the regularly scheduled lecture, and you know what's ahead of you. It's a lot about research, right? So this is a great assignment because it teaches you the difference. In one half, you're doing just pure research. In the other half, you're giving your opinion. All right, now your opinion won't offend me. I've read everything from every direction. If you have a strong opinion one way or the other, great. Because we don't believe in unanimity of thought, right? That would kind of defeat the whole purpose of the class. But let me explain the problems in the political party and why they're censoring in some states and not in Utah. Here's the deal. Everybody thinks that they get to vote in November and their vote counts. But for most states, their vote doesn't count in November. In Utah, the Republican candidate was going to get the 6 electoral votes regardless, period. End of story. It didn't matter what else happened. Why? Because it's the party system. Now look at this. Most people are independents. Most people are not Democrats or Republicans. Democrats, let's say they're 25%. That's probably high, but let's say they are. Let's say Republicans are 25%. We know that's high. It's less than that. But here's the deal. Within that party, they're divided too. So what happens is they're the ones that select the candidates. So here we are saying the Republican Party, and we had a great election. This one just happened. And it was now Governor Cox running against a former Governor Huntsman, who was also an ambassador, and a couple of other candidates. So like 5 candidates, Republican candidates, who had a shot to become our next governor. They ran in the primary. Whoever won that primary was going to be governor. It didn't matter what the independents or Democrats voted come fall. This was decided in the summer. And it only takes a faction of this whole group. A faction is a small group, right? It only took a faction of this group to make it happen. So it's a subset of a subset that picked the candidates. I don't know, I have to look this up, but I think Mr. Cox only got like 40% of the total votes. 60% voted for another candidate. That's called primaried. When you win and the others lose, you're primaried. The only way Lee will lose the election in 2 years is if another Republican before the main election takes him out, which is unlikely. But he did it to a former senator named Bennett. The only way to be a senator in Utah is to be in the Republican Party and to win the vote in the primary. Same thing with the Democrats. If you're in a state like let's take one, New York, right? Most of those districts, it's decided here. So when most people vote, it's already decided. So what's the point of a political party? Political parties have an obligation to give us one good candidate each, at least to make a good choice of it. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they give us inferior candidates. But if they do their job and pick good candidates, but they're normally, notice, look at the baubles, look here, they're at the extremes of their own party. They're not in the mainstream. These are the people that pick the candidates, and people in the middle are stuck with people that are picked from more extreme positions. So the question is, why would you want to be part of a political party? Well, I can understand people why they wouldn't want to be, right? I mean, because yeah, this all looks pretty unsavory today for a lot of folks. But here's the deal. If you want to affect change, you got to help decide who the candidates are. And you can only do that within the political party. And the beauty of the political party is your vote counts there, but you got to show up to the different meetings and you got to vote in the primary. So the primary vote matters. So that's your choice. Do I help pick candidates from within a party and get good candidates? Or do I sit it out and just hope for the best and then vote in November? Pat myself on the back. Yeah, I voted. Okay, that's great. That is great. But help pick the candidates. The only district in Utah that is at all competitive is the one in Salt Lake and northern Utah County, the Burgess district. That is flip-flop 4 times in 8 years. That right there will be competitive next time, right? So both the Democrats and the Republicans in those areas, they got Burgess Owens here, and then they've got, a candidate, probably be the same guy that held a seat before. That is going to be an interesting thing. So when we say all politics is local, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about all politics literally being local. Now, the president was found not guilty. Not guilty is a legal status. It doesn't mean innocent or exonerated. Exoneration is the actual term. Acquittal means a jury has found you not guilty, which is a legal status. Exoneration means that evidence has been produced that proves that the person cannot be guilty of a crime. For example, somebody's charged with murder. They go through the courts, and then somebody presents DNA evidence that shows they had no way they could have committed that crime. That's exoneration. But that's not what happened here. It was a not guilty verdict, not an exoneration. The president's own lawyers, again, this is all Republicans talking here. His own lawyers posed this argument.
If my colleagues on this side of the chamber actually think that President Trump committed a criminal offense, and let's understand, a high crime is a felony and a misdemeanor is a misdemeanor. The words haven't changed that much over the time. After he's out of office, you go and arrest him. So there is no opportunity where the president of the United States can run rampant in January, the end of his term, and just go away scot-free. The Department of Justice does know what to do with such people. And so far, I haven't seen any activity in that direction. And not only that, the people who stormed this building and breached it were not accused of conspiring with the president. But the section I read, judgment, in other words, the bad thing that can happen, the judgment, in cases of impeachment, i.e. what we are doing, shall not extend further than removal from office. What is so hard about that? Which of those words are unclear? Shall not extend further than removal from office. President Trump no longer is in office. The object of the Constitution has been achieved. He was removed by the voters.
And it's a strong argument, no doubt. And so I leave that to you to think about. But by the same token, right, does that also mean that to remove someone from office, remove them from future office, which is really what happens with this? So there's two arguments to that. There's both sides to it. But anyway, but he did say this: it could still be in a criminal court. In other words, could there be other crimes that you could go to real courts for, where they can put you in jail and they can charge you fines? So what we'll do is we'll keep an eye on things for the next few weeks and see if the former president doesn't get some lawsuits in criminal court that are outside of this political process we just had, because that is a different ball game. And if that happens, we'll teach you more about the justice system, and then we'll deal with that when it happens. One of the most important speeches given was given by the Republican minority leader. He was majority leader when this all started. He deliberately delayed the trial until after the inauguration. Was that a good idea or not? I'm probably thinking it was. That's my own personal opinion. But then again, I'm probably a minority in that opinion. But nevertheless, he gave the speech of the entire thing. And Mitch McConnell did so last time too, did so on January 6th. So here is now the Republican leader in the Senate talking on this very, very Republican news channel, Fox News, from the floor of the Senate, and they played the whole thing in its entirety. Let's go ahead and listen to Mitch McConnell and what he had to say.
A little bit more time. Thanks so much.
You're looking live now on the floor of the Senate. The minority leader, Mitch McConnell, delivering remarks. Let's listen.
Falsehoods by the most powerful man on earth because he was angry he lost an election. Former President Trump's actions preceded the riot were a disgraceful dereliction of duty. The House accused the former president of, quote, incitement. That is a specific term from the criminal law. Let me just put that aside for a moment and reiterate something I said weeks ago. There's no question, none, that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. No question about it. The people who stormed this building believed they were acting on the wishes and instructions of their president. And having that belief was a foreseeable consequence of the growing crescendo of false statements, conspiracy theories, and reckless hyperbole kept shouting into the largest megaphone on planet Earth. The issue
Okay,
is,
so Mitch McConnell is not exonerating the former president, but he voted not guilty because, and he's explaining this to his voters back in Kentucky, because he listened to that one lawyer who said you can't, remove somebody from office. They're already removed by the voters. The voters ultimately removed the former president. So he voted not guilty, but he's not exonerating. Quite the opposite. It was one of the most important speeches he ever gave. And he's given many. He gives like one a day. But here's Mitch McConnell, and we'll continue with him. Ready?
is not only the president's intemperate language on January 6th. It is not just his endorsement of remarks in which an associate urged, quote, trial by combat. It was also the entire manufactured atmosphere of looming catastrophe, the increasingly wild myths about a reverse landslide election that was somehow being stolen, some secret coup by our now president. Now, I defended the president's right to bring any complaints to our legal system. The legal system spoke. The Electoral College spoke. As I stood up and said clearly at that time, the election was settled. It was over. But that just really opened a new chapter of even wilder, and more unfounded claims. The leader of the free world cannot spend weeks thundering that shadowy forces are stealing our country and then feign surprise when people believe him and do reckless things. Now, sadly, many politicians sometimes make overheated comments or use metaphors. We saw that unhinged listeners might take literally, but that was different. That's different from what we saw. This was an intensifying crescendo of conspiracy theories orchestrated by an outgoing president who seemed determined to either overturn the voters' decision or else torch our institutions on the way out.
All right, you guys, good luck on that assignment. Again, don't panic if your score drops dramatically, because it will if you don't get it done by Wednesday, but you can bring it right back up very quickly because that category is 30% of your grade, okay? So make sure you get that one turned in and your grade will pop right back up where it was before. All right, we'll talk to you guys later.